We are back with our book study, and today we start on page 99. The heading is, What am I expecting from a relationship? So this is Abraham continuing to speak now in response to the question asked by someone in an Abraham workshop. The question was, how can I remain positively focused when my mate is predominantly focused on lack and makes no effort to be positive? And it gets to me. It's hard not to also feel lack. So we discussed this last time, that we can allow for so many others. We can allow so much that it does not make any difference what anyone else is thinking, allowing, or restricting. We can be the allowers. And prosperity, abundance, everyone creates their own abundance. And in the Indian philosophy, I will not call it the Hindu philosophy, I will call it the Indian philosophy because it's across the board, it's part of the culture, is the thought or the idea that every new individual coming into a family brings prosperity into the family. Lakshmi. And so when a baby is born, it is said that the baby brings with that baby their own food supply. That is why babies bring joy into a family. Babies bring joy into a family because they bring abundance into a family. When a bride comes into a family, she is bringing abundance into the family with her. So this is the mindset, this is the thought that every new member, because you see, you can go the other way. You're going to say this is why people end up having so many babies. You could say that every time there's a new family member, that now there's a shortage of available resources in the family because now you have more mouths to feed. But when you look at it differently and you say every person who is coming into the family is bringing more abundance into the family, that's a reason to have more babies, isn't it? Right? So, so every person allows their own prosperity. And it does not matter if you have someone in the family who does not think abundantly. You are capable of thinking abundantly, not just for the two of you, but for the entire community, for the entire world. You can make your attraction power for abundance so big that it brings in so much prosperity that you don't even have to worry about who is allowing it and who is not. Because here's the thing, soon as you start looking at other people and judging them, you are now putting them in a group that says these people are allowers and these are not allowers. Soon as you judge someone as being a not allower, you are focusing on not allowing. So what are you going to get? You're going to get not allowing, because that's where your attention is. And so don't worry about what the rest of the world is doing and whether they're allowing or not allowing. You just keep doing what you've got to do. Okay? All right. So going from there, then we discussed the bedtime appreciation exercise, and now we are on the heading, what am I expecting from a relationship? And Abraham is saying, you have the power to evoke an emotional response which will result in a behavior that you will experience from another person. So under this heading, they're explaining, and I'm going to read this out to you. It's at the bottom of the page, page 99. Have you had the experience of behaving with someone in a way that you had not intended to? I have. This has happened to me. This has happened to me. I am usually an extremely calm person. And I remember getting on the phone with a customer service representative who really, I could not understand my response to this person. Like, I hung up and I was like, what happened? And then I remembered this, that people extract it from you. But the point is, they cannot extract it from you unless you don't drop down to their level. If you drop down to their level, only then can they extract it from you, right? So yes, I allowed myself to go there. Okay, so then I like this example that Abraham says, has used over here. Have you noticed the personality of a child changing depending on which adult is interacting with the child? I sure have. Right? Children behave so differently with one person and totally differently with another person, which is extremely interesting. And why is it? It's because they are responding to the vibration of that person. That's why. Okay, so you cannot get to a new and improved situation by giving your attention to the current situation. This is always what Abraham teaches us. If you focus on the way things are, then you are perpetuating the way things are into the future. Hi Tamika, Rose, and Heather. Good to see you on Facebook. If you want to join us on Zoom, you can. The link is under the events tab. All right. Okay, so now at the top of the page here, Abraham is telling us really how visualization works. Abraham says that no distinction is made by the universe between the vibration that you offer as you observe something and the vibration that you offer as you imagine something. Because the universe is responding to your vibration. The universe is not responding to the subject of your thought. If you will simply imagine your life as you want it to be, all cooperative components will be summoned. And even more important, all components that are summoned will cooperate. It is law. And then they say that every person has the possibility to give you both the having and the not having of a certain behavior. For example, people have the possibility of being understanding or not being understanding, of being pleasant or not being pleasant, being unpleasant, being positive or being negative. The experience that you will have with them is about what you will evoke from them based on your vibration. And so that is important to understand, that when we bring ourselves to a higher place on the emotional scale and then interact with other people, our interaction will be more satisfying to us and it'll just be happier. It'll just be happier. And so in the end, Abraham says on page 100 that the thing to do is to love yourself. When you love yourselves, then the other people with whom you interact will respond to you from a place of love. And so you'll have harmony in all your interactions. The next question is a really interesting one that Jerry is asking Abraham. And the question is it possible for one person, the same mate, to continue to be our perfect mate even though we are growing and changing and evolving? And then Jerry goes on to give an example. I mean, there was a time in my life when I was an acrobat and I had to be able to throw my partner high and catch her. And so she had to be under 5 feet tall and weigh under 98 pounds. And when I met Esther many years later, none of that was relevant anymore. Other things attracted me to Esther. And so she was the perfect mate at the time when she came into my life. So it seems like monogamy, or being with one person forever, could be pretty challenging. And I just had to say, in response to Jerry's question, that he was only looking within the circus for his partner. He could have looked outside the circus. He wouldn't have to throw her high and catch her. All right. So then Abraham says that we are all always growing. Everyone is growing. Nobody is static. Everyone is growing. You can grow together or you can grow apart. That's a choice. So if you keep love alive, love does not have to do with anything other than just love. People make a very big deal out of it. Oh, love has to be, I have to be able to have conversations with that person, intellectual conversations. They have to like the same things I like. Like they should be outgoing, or they should be athletic, just like I am. Otherwise, how are we going to understand each other? How are we going to enjoy each other's company? And I'm going to look at those people, if they are listening on the call just now. I'm going to say, well, guess what? I love Stella, my puppy, my dog. How many intellectual conversations do you think I have with her? How many athletic events does she join me? Does she play chess with me? Like, why is there love? Like how these are just measures of love that people have created. You don't have to have those measures. Love is love. It's independent of everything else. You make it way too complicated. And I can say that because I was like that. I had made it very complicated as well. I didn't realize this. What I realize and understand now is that love is just love. And now I look at the relationship of my grandparents and I finally understand it. Because when I was a child, I used to look at my parents' relationship, and then I used to look at both sets of grandparents and aunts and uncles and their relationships, and I used to actually wonder about how they were so different. I was always this type of person, right? I was always, ever since I was 3 years old, I was noticing how people behaved. But what I noticed was, and as I was reading fairy tales at the same time, I noticed that my question was, why are my grandparents married to each other? Like that was the question in my head. Why are my grandparents married to each other? I can't understand it because they don't seem to talk to each other at all. Like there's a whole day will go by and I only see them talking to each other about when dinner is going to be served or what's for dinner. Like there's no conversation here. And then I hear my parents talk about how sharing conversation is so important in a relationship. And I'm observing all these relationships in my family, and I really wondered why people were together. And now I can see that they didn't need another reason to be together except that they loved each other and they were married. Like they didn't need to be another reason. And the thing is, we look for other reasons. And this is so interesting to me because just 2 days ago, my son comes into my office. I have a 3-seater in my office, by the way. Stella is sleeping on it just now. And so the kids will come and sit on the 3-seater in my office, and that's where we have our conversations. So my son comes and he sits there and he says to me, I need you to explain something to me. And I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And he said, how do people fall in love when they have arranged marriages? Because, arranged marriages are part of our culture. And his question was, I don't understand this. How can people in arranged marriages fall in love? So I had to have that conversation with him. And it's very much the same conversation here. You just decide to love. And then you do. Because you can decide to love, or you can decide not to love. It's a decision. And I asked him, I started my conversation asking him, so why do you love Stella? Like, why do you care for this dog? Because we went to a farm and we decided this is going to be our dog. So we fell in love with it. Right? It was a decision. You opened your heart, you let someone in. It's a decision. And then it is about being committed to that decision every single day. When am I going to wake up in the morning and say, Stella, today I hate you today. I don't love you anymore. Go feed yourself, take yourself for a walk. Right? I don't even feel like doing that. That has never happened. Why? Because every day she looks at me with her puppy dog eyes and I fall in love with her again. Because she looks at me with love. So she renews her love for me, and therefore my love remains steady. It's a decision. You can make a decision to remain in love, and you know what? I've seen my parents do it. My father did that every single day. My mother was horrible, horrible, horrible to him, and he was always letting go, letting go, letting go, and renewing his love. Through my child's eyes, I couldn't understand how he could love her this much. He didn't love us that much, but she could do no wrong. Like, there was nothing she could do wrong. Everything she ever did, even though it was not perfect from where I saw it, from where he saw it, it was perfect. Nobody could question. So, it was a decision. He just made the decision. His wife is perfect. No questions. That's it. Yeah. I see Darcy doing the same thing, by the way, Lana. He reminds me a lot of the way my father, honestly, he reminds me so much of my father's behavior with my mother. Not to say that you're horrible to him every day.
Feeling this was going to come up.
Okay. You brought it from me because you looked at me like that. Okay. You evoked it. Let's get back here. So, we're moving on to the next heading. What are the desired characteristics of a perfect mate? Really good question, isn't it? So Jerry says, I think I already read this, right? Now let's read Abraham's response. So Abraham said that everyone is growing and you don't have to grow apart. You just have to decide to love that same person, or you can make a decision that you are no longer wanting to be with that person. And if you make that decision, then releasing, I'm reading from the book now, page 101, right at the top. The releasing of one mate and the receiving of another would not be an uncomfortable or unpleasant situation. If you are remaining, you can release your current partner with love. Release with love and go get another one with love. You don't have to hate the one that you have. You don't have to push back. You can release with love and move on. So Abraham says the best intention, the best vows. Now they've simplified this since they wrote the book, because now what Abraham says is, I like you very much, let's go. That's it. Let's give it a try, right? But here it's a little bit of a deeper intention. I'm going to read this intention. A much better intention or vow. So Abraham is saying all that until I will stay together with you in sickness and until death do us part is not a good vow. Here's the replacement. It is my dominant intent to focus my thoughts in a positive direction so that I maintain my connection with the source and the love that is really who I am. And in doing so, I will always present the best of myself to you. It is my desire that you ask the same for yourself, and it is my expectation that as each of us works to maintain our individual alignment with who we really are, our relationship with one another will be one of continual and joyful expansion. So, it's a decision. This is a decision. A decision to stay lined up with who you really are is a decision to always come from a place of love. Right? Okay. So then Jerry goes from there and asks another question. And he says, for much of my life, I have been trying to determine what is the natural and right way for humans to approach relationships. I looked at the other beasts that roam the planet and have noticed that, for the most part, they are not much for monogamy. The elephant runs off all of the other male elephants, and the rooster will fight to the death any rooster that interferes with his flock of hens. I wondered if humans were to behave more like the animals in regard to mating, would the human species become stronger and more powerful, like in the survival of the fittest with the animals? From the perspective of non-physical, is there a right and wrong approach to relationships? So my question is, what is natural? And Abraham is saying, there are enough natural forces at work to assure the sustaining of the human species through variation. Enough diversity, enough balance. So that's not the case. Abraham basically is saying to Jerry, that's not the case. Our interest, so Abraham is saying our interest in human relationships is about your survival in joy. And basically what Abraham is saying is there's no right or wrong way of doing it. And that's, where was that? Here. So Abraham is saying that your question leads to a bigger question. And the bigger question is, there are right and wrong ways to live, and all people should discover and agree on what the right way of living is, and then that right way should be enforced. And Abraham is saying that's a flawed premise and that's not true. And that I'm reading that from page 103. But before we go there, on page 102, there's a list of things that I'm going to read off to you now directly from the book. Hi Yolanda, good to see you. All right, so Abraham is saying, these are the most correct, truthful, accurate, natural things that we know about you as you are expressing through your physical form. So these things that I'm now going to read out to you, these are the only true things. 1, you are extensions of source energy. 2, you are physically focused for the purpose of experiencing contrast. for the purpose of experiencing contrast. 3. You are choosing to experience contrast for the purpose of new ideas and decisions about life. 4. Those new ideas and decisions about life equal the expansion of the universe. 5. The expansion of the universe is an inevitable consequence of life. 6. When your physical life causes the non-physical part of you to expand, you must go with the expansion if you are to experience joy. 7. Joy is the most natural tenet of that which you and we are. 8. Relationships are the basis of your contrast. 9. Therefore, relationships are the basis of all expansion. 10. Therefore, relationships are the basis of your joy. 11. If you do not find the thoughts that allow the joy, you are holding yourself back from who you have become. 12. Your relationships are your reason for your expansion. 13. Your relationships are often your reason for disallowing your expansion. 14. It is natural to be in a state of joy. 15. It is natural to be in a state of growth. 16. It is natural to be in a state of freedom. 17. These are the most important things for you to understand about relationships. That is a lot. So, the most important thing is that our relationships create contrast. Contrast is necessary to the living of life, and we can use that to withhold joy or to experience joy. Basically, that's what it is. And what that boils down to is perspective. Our perspective is everything. Right? Okay, so then Abraham is saying, new intentions and ideas that are born from the contrast are important to the living of life. If we eliminate contrast, so if everyone followed the same rule, if everyone thought that the same thing was the right thing, there was only one right way of doing things, there would be no contrast. And if there is no contrast, then there would be no expansion. Life would come to an end, because life moves onwards because there is contrast. Okay? And then Abraham says, do not worry, for that will never be the case. So the good news is contrast will not go away and human beings will continue to flourish. The bad news is contrast will not go away, and therefore you will have to learn to deal with it. All right. We are now on page 104. First paragraph, last line. Your joyful survival is predicated upon your understanding of these things. Which things? The 17 things that we just read. Okay? When your life causes you to radiate a request into your vibrational escrow, your emotional guidance system will help you to find vibrational alignment with it. And finding that alignment is necessary to your joyful fulfillment and expansion. And no laws that are apart from that have any bearing on you. Forget about any other laws that people talk about. This is the only thing we need to remember. It is about alignment, 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 alignment. That's it. Now, Abraham then goes into another discussion which I thought was really interesting. And that discussion is on page 104, third paragraph. And third line of the third paragraph. Your laws are usually written from the perspective of what is not wanted. So laws are written to prevent contrast. But you can't prevent contrast. Contrast is a part of life. It doesn't matter how many laws you make, contrast will still exist. You cannot take away contrast from the human equation. So I'm going to read this. Many people spend tremendous amount of time in argument about which laws are right and which laws are wrong, and in doing so, hold themselves apart from their expanded perspectives. And then they use the negative emotion that they feel which exists because of their separation from source, as their justification for their arguments. I mean, think about it. Laws are written. Why are they written? Because they're written to prevent people from behaving in ways that someone has decided people should not behave in. That's it. They are to control your behavior. The problem with that is that you can control behavior in the short term, but because you cannot control thought, ultimately speaking, you cannot control behavior. Because soon as the opportunity is there, it will be taken. Because laws cannot change thinking. They can only change behavior. They can only change action. They cannot change this. Right? It is the law in this culture that you can't marry outside the culture, but people do. Right? It is the law that you should not break in and enter someone else's house without their permission, but people do. You cannot control what's going on in here. The only way you can control what's going on in here is when you are on the vibration of love. If you're on the vibration of love, nothing bad can happen. So that's the only real way, the only real mechanism for control is to love. So Abraham says, one right way would lead to endedness. Many right ways allow eternal expansion. Many right ways. Just allow everyone to do whatever they feel is right for them. Right for them. Don't impose your idea on anyone else. And they should not impose their right idea on you either, unless you accept it. So Abraham says that problems happen when people want to have the final word. They want to be right. They want acknowledgement from someone else that they are right. That rightness and wrongness is at the bottom of every single conflict in the world. The reason why people believe that they need laws to control others around them is that they believe that the behavior of others can negatively impact them. And you only think that way when you don't understand the emotional scale. When you understand the emotional scale, you no longer feel like that. It's not applicable anymore. When you come to understand that nothing can come into your experience unless you invite it through your thought, then you understand that you can release the impossible task of trying to control the behavior of others and replace it with the much simpler task of controlling the direction of your own thoughts. Page 105. So, what's easy? For me to control my thoughts, or for me to try and control each and every action of everyone else? Parents drive themselves nuts trying to control each and every action of their children. I mean, that's okay when you have one child, but imagine if you have 5. My grandmother had 11. I know, right? Can you imagine? Okay. So then Abraham says, every awful, abhorrent thing that you see exists only because someone is disallowing the well-being that would otherwise be theirs. So anything that we look at in the world and we say, oh my God, that should just not happen. Why is that happening? Those things only happen when people are not allowing well-being. You do not have to work at that because you just have to let go. It's not, alignment is natural. It should not take work to be aligned. The thing that takes work is to give up the fight. We are so used to fighting that giving up the fight is where we expend all our energy. We are so involved in proving ourselves right that actually stopping ourselves from proving ourselves right is what takes most of our energy. Because we're fighting. Fighting takes up a lot of energy, and making ourselves stop the fight is where we expend all our energy when we come across law of attraction. Because you have to stop doing those things that you were doing before. What were you doing before? You were fighting with the whole world. You're wrong, my brother's wrong, my sister's wrong, my forefathers were wrong. Everybody was wrong and everybody's out to get me. So you're fighting all of those things. My neighbor's wrong. My MP is wrong. Everyone's wrong. My doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. You can go on and on forever. So you have to stop thinking all those stops. And I try and explain it with the analogy of a car because it makes so much sense. When a car is going, applying the brake to bring it to a stop uses a lot of energy. We all know that we save fuel when we are going at a high speed without applying the brakes. Right? Applying brakes takes energy. So when we start doing law of attraction work, we have to stop doing all those things that we were doing before. That takes a lot of energy. And that is what makes it hard to do this work. But once you bring that old car to a stop, disembark and get into your new law of attraction, energy efficient car, then it does not happen anymore. Then it's easy, it's smooth sailing, it's a fun ride, it's lovely, and you never have to use the brakes. Right? Okay. And then another question under the heading, will feeling good always attract good feelers? So the question is it a good idea for me to look for a mate who makes me feel good about myself? Abraham says, when others hold you as their object of attention and feel appreciation at the same time, of course it feels good to you. But that's a very conditional way of living, because the day they decide not to look at you that way, then what are you going to do? And so that is not a good idea to look for people who bring out the best in you. Because the day they decide that they are not willing to do the work to bring the best out in you, now the worst of you is going to come out. Right? And that is not a good thing. That's too much dependency. So now Abraham says a really important thing here. The reason why most relationships are much better feeling when they are new is because in the beginning, both partners are more inclined to look for the positive aspects of one another. Right? So things go more smoothly. But once you start noticing one tiny little thing that is off, then your attention to that tiny little thing will bring another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing until you get to a point where you are convinced that you made the wrong decision. You can convince yourself of anything. That is what our self-talk is all about. We can convince ourselves to fall in love, and we can convince ourselves to fall out of love. It's self-talk. So then Jerry says, if there were only two people on earth, no matter who that other person was, couldn't we create out of that what we want? Couldn't we find within that one person the perfect mate? The short answer is yes. Yes, you can. And the long answer is that if there were only two people on planet Earth, then you would not have experienced much or seen much of different types of behavior to have given birth to desires where you would be asking for more attributes in a partner, because you would not have had the opportunity for contrast. Contrast is what gives birth to more complicated desires, basically. So if there were only two people on planet Earth, it would be really simple. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to when we use things like burning the bridges. When we say burn the bridges or burn the boats, there's no going back. You limit your options, then you become more prepared to live with the limited options. The more options you have, then you start thinking more about the pros and cons of each, and it leads to paralysis. I would much rather go into an ice cream store that only has 10 flavors than go into a Baskin Robbins that has hundreds. It's too time consuming, too much effort, in my opinion, to go and check all of those out. Just give me 10. I can make a very good decision based on 10. But based on 100? Oh my God. Right? So the more options that we evaluate, then we make our decision-making process more complicated. But if there are only two people on planet Earth, it's not complicated, is it? It's this or the highway. What are you going to do? So when your choices are limited, you are more open to being satisfied with what you have. Because the human instinct is, oh, but what if there's something better than this? What if I can find something that's even better than this? So you keep looking and you keep looking and you keep looking and you keep looking. Whereas you can find whatever you want because you extract it out of that situation. You're the one who's extracting it. So if you did the work, very interesting. If you did the work to come right up here to high on the emotional scale, then whoever shows up is the right one. Because you don't have to evaluate them based on any sort of criteria if you are over here. But if you're not over here, then of course there are better ones out there. Because if you're over here in a place of worry or fear or something like that, then obviously there are better options out there, right? So you don't have to worry about finding the best one. You just have to worry about getting up here, and then the best one will show up. Whoever shows up will be the best one. And that, even though that is limited in terms of choice, but it's the perfect one, right? So, I think it's interesting to look at it that way. It's the same thing that I do when I'm accepting tenants. When I accept rental applications, I do some self-talk, thinking, vibrational work, and come to this place where I say whoever shows up is going to be the best one for me, and then whoever shows up, I accept. But I could collect hundreds of applications, make my life miserable, going through all the criteria of whether this person fits the bill or doesn't fit the bill, which is what I see a lot of other landlords doing. They spend hours going through and investigating people and calling their references and doing credit checks. And I've never done a credit check in my life. I don't check credit. I don't think that I need to. I just tell myself the perfect person will show up. So, I mean, if I can do that for a tenant, I can do that, and I do that for everything. Every single time I have hired anyone for any kind of work, I've done it that way. And then people just show up. The right people just show up. My husband showed up that way. He literally landed at my doorstep, called me from outside and said, I'm outside your building, can I come in? It's like, oh, okay. And we hadn't seen each other in years. All right, that's a whole other story. Fun story. All right. Where were we? Oh, we are at the end of our section. That's it, guys. We have ended the section. And then the next section, part 3 of the book, is called Sexuality and the Law of Attraction, Sexuality, Sensuality, and the Opinions of Others. So that's a good place to stop for today, I think. And then we can get started the next time we meet with the next section. So I'm going to stop here, and we have a few minutes. So I'm just going to leave the lines open for any questions. So if anyone has any questions either on Facebook or here on Zoom, feel free to jump in.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
At one of the things when you were saying, you said the answer is to love yourself.
Yes.
What does it look like when Abraham says love yourself? What exactly in everyday life, how does that look?
Awesome question. Awesome question. Rochelle, I see your comment and I'll come back to it in a minute. Awesome. Okay, so when you love yourself, how does it show up in your day-to-day life? When you love yourself, you don't criticize yourself. And you don't criticize others either. You don't read between the lines. You don't beat up on yourself. You are open to whatever comes and willing to say yes. So when you love yourself, you also trust yourself. You don't second guess your decisions. You trust yourself and you trust other people as well. When you love yourself, you don't judge yourself and you don't judge other people either. I was having a conversation with someone last night. I was coaching and I asked her a question, and in response she said, I always give other people the benefit of the doubt ever since I started listening to you. And I said to her in response to that comment, yes, but do you give yourself the benefit of the doubt? Because she was being... Yeah.
So that is loving you.
Yes. Because this beautiful, beautiful person that I was coaching last night wants to be perfect. And wanting to be perfect is not a bad thing, because I want to be perfect as well. I keep telling myself that my goal is to be the best version of myself. But I don't beat up on myself for not being perfect. The problem happens when you want to be perfect and then you beat up on yourself because you weren't perfect. You didn't have the perfect answer. You weren't perfectly prepared. You didn't look perfect. You don't have the perfect skill. you should give yourself the same amount of benefit of the doubt that you would give someone else.
And so the steps to take, like, so because we are used to that, that's what we've been doing. So what can we do to get us better at catching ourselves from beating ourselves?
It's about awareness. The first step is to ask for awareness. I want to be aware, more aware of when I am not giving myself the benefit of the doubt, when I'm being less than loving to myself. I want to be aware that I'm doing it. Because if you're not aware, then it's like, people say, so what questions do you have? Well, if I knew what questions I had, I'd be asking them. I don't know what questions should I have? Right? It's about awareness. When you're not aware, how can you change something if you're not aware? I remember the fact that I loved tennis when I was around 10, 11 years old. Oh my God, I was in love with tennis. I would spend my entire afternoon just practicing tennis. And then my parents finally had this thing that, oh, she's crazy, might as well get her a coach. And it wasn't until I met the coach that I discovered that I was doing it all wrong. I was not aware. I was practicing, but I was not aware. So this is also this is why coaching helps in terms of law of attraction, because you don't know what you're doing wrong until someone else looks at it and says, no, sweetheart, that's not how it works. Right? So the first thing to ask for is awareness. I want to be aware. This is where in the 40-day workbook, in the unlimited workbook, we have, I have the list right here. We have an affirmation that says, I want to feel my guidance. What is that? That basically we are asking for awareness. Awareness, I want to be aware, guide me, what am I doing wrong? Because obviously I'm not getting the results that I want, so I am doing something wrong, but I'm not aware what that is. So universe, help me to become aware. And it's like any other desire. You ask and the universe says yes. Awareness. And it's what I say is, you really have to do the work yourself, because there isn't a single coach in the world who can live inside your head. I can be the best coach ever, but you're not taking me home and plugging me in your head. Even if I was to invite you to come and live in my house for a week, I'm still not plugging into your head. I can only correct what I can observe and feel and see. Right? So you have to become aware. Your own personal awareness is the secret to your growth and improvement. Okay? You're welcome. All right, let me see what Rochelle has here. Oh, awesome. Rochelle likes the answer. I'm glad you like that answer, Rochelle. So interesting that if one is not high up on the emotional scale, they may be looking outside to provide for their own feeling of lack and unfulfillment. Yes, sweetheart, that's always the case. That is why Abraham just keeps repeating over and over again. It's the same answer. And Abraham says this. You can ask Abraham whatever questions you ask, it's the same answer every single time. And the answer is go up the emotional scale. Go up the emotional scale. It's all about alignment. Go up the emotional scale. That is, we don't need to do anything else if we just do that one thing. Just go up the emotional scale. It is supposed to be simple, not difficult. All right. Lena, any questions?
No, I'm just taking it all in. I
Awesome.
agree with Lakshmi. It's in all of it. You have to work on yourself. You can't work on other people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to work on yourself. And yes, you can be aware of possible mistakes or thoughts or things like that. It's getting from there to the next hurdle that I struggle with.
Okay. So now you have awareness. Now what?
Exactly. I'll take you up on your offer for a week at your house.
Well, see, once you have awareness, then the next step is what I was talking to Lakshmi about, is that daily practice of self-love, which means don't beat up on yourself. Now that you know that you're doing everything wrong, and Lena, this is me 20 years ago. Oh my God, I guess I'm doing everything wrong. I need to find a way to turn this thing off because it's hurting me. And then what you do is what I did. And I've shared it with you time and time again. Don't beat up on yourself. Understand that yes, you were doing it wrong. And now find something else to fill your head with.
Oh, I agree. I definitely don't beat up on myself anymore. I care, but not that much has always stuck. And in all of life,
Yeah.
family, work, whatever,
Yeah.
I care that much.
Yep.
I can that struggle and talk with Darcy, and in the end, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. It is
Yeah.
going to happen the way it's going to happen. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to let it play it out. So yeah, I mean, I'm just always, my thoughts are always judgmental.
Well,
Somewhat on, somewhat a lot of outside.
But that's
Right.
exactly what was the answer to Lakshmi's question. You have to give yourself the same benefit of doubt that you would give anyone else. You cannot be judge and jury in your own court case. Don't do that to yourself. You are not guilty because Source doesn't think about it that way. Why should you think about it that way? If Source can still love you regardless of whatever you do, why can't you love yourself? And that's basically it. Knowing that, accepting that, practicing that, Lena, is the work. And you know how you do that work is just by reminding yourself. I can't be all that bad if Source still loves me.
Oh, sorry. I'm laughing about the previous conversation of Darcy and me. And I have to add, I don't know about you, Zara, and you have to confirm this. Do you not see a difference in Lakshmi? Like, she's happier, smilier.
Yeah, she smiles a lot more than before. Yeah.
I told her that this morning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Whoever stays with the work will find a change. There's always a shift, even though you can't see it. But that's the thing. Other people start seeing it, and other people start telling you, "Look at you. What's happened? Something's different about you." Yeah. Jennifer, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you. Just enjoying listening.
Awesome. All right. I don't see any other questions on Facebook either, so we will go ahead and close the call. Have a super fantastic rest of the day, and I will see you next Thursday for this. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Recording stopped.
Bye, everyone. Heather, Tamika, Rochelle, Yolanda, good to see you. Bye for now.